One in five Americans over 65 has it right now. By the time they reach 80, it is one in three. And it is not a heart condition, not a blood pressure problem, not a disease they were diagnosed with. It is the quiet collapse of the muscle that keeps them upright, the muscle in their legs. The CDC calls it sarcopenia. I call it the thing that takes people out of their own lives while they still have years left to live. Here is what makes this so important right now. There are 6 foods that work directly against this process. Foods available at any grocery store. Foods most seniors already walk right past. And the one that matters most is something a lot of you have been specifically told to avoid. I am going to give you all 6 today, ranked by impact. And by the end of this, you will know exactly what to put on your plate starting tomorrow. I am Dr. Alex Morgan. I practiced emergency medicine for over 2 decades. And what I saw in the ER changed how I think about the years before the emergency. Because the patients who came in after a fall, who could not get off the floor, who fractured a hip doing something they had done 1,000 times before, most of them had been losing the muscle to prevent it for years, quietly, without knowing it, and without anyone telling them what they could have done differently. Before I give you the list, drop your age in the comments. Just your age. I want to know who is watching this. And I read every comment. Fall costs in this country are staggering. The CDC estimates falls cost the US healthcare system over $50 billion every year. Not the cost of the fall itself, the cost of what the fall exposes. A leg that was already failing, muscle that had been shrinking quietly for a decade. The fall is just when the bill comes due. I want to be precise about something before we go further. Sarcopenia is not a disease of inactivity alone. I have had patients who are walking every day, doing light exercise, genuinely trying, and still losing muscle year by year because the nutritional inputs were wrong. The muscle needs specific compounds to maintain itself, not just protein generally, specific molecules at specific thresholds. Without those, the machinery that builds and repairs muscle runs at a fraction of its capacity, no matter how good your intentions are. After 65, a condition researchers term anabolic resistance takes hold in the body. Your muscles become stubborn. You can eat protein. You can take supplements, but the signal does not get through the way it used to. The biological machinery that builds muscle starts running impaired. And these 6 foods target that machinery directly. We are going to count down from 6 to 1, from meaningful to transformational. Number 6, eggs. I know you have been hearing about eggs your entire life. They raise cholesterol, put them down. And I want to be direct with you. That advice, applied to adults over 60, was one of the most counterproductive pieces of guidance ever widely circulated, because eggs are not primarily a cholesterol issue for most older adults. Eggs are a leucine delivery system. Leucine is an amino acid. If that term does not mean much to you, think of it this way. Leucine is the key that starts the engine. The engine is muscle protein synthesis, the biological mechanism your body uses to construct and maintain muscle fiber. Without enough leucine at a meal, that engine does not turn over. It does not matter how much protein you ate. The signal never fires. Here is the part most people have never been told. After 65, the threshold changes. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition shows that adults over 65 need significantly more leucine per meal to trigger the same muscle building response as a younger person. We are talking about 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine as the minimum effective threshold per meal. Below that, almost nothing happens at the muscle level. That threshold is higher than most seniors are consistently hitting at any single meal. So what gets you there? That is the key question. 2 large whole eggs deliver approximately 1.6 grams of leucine. That gets you close. Pair them with a tablespoon of olive oil and a handful of spinach. And the fat-soluble nutrients in the yolk, vitamin D and choline in particular, absorb far more efficiently That combination helps push you across the threshold where the signal actually fires. And here's what everyone is throwing away: the yolk. Stop and think about that for a second. The yolk contains choline, which helps maintain the structural stability of your muscle cell membranes. As those membranes become more fragile with age, they hold nutrients less effectively. Think of the yolk as the operational core of what makes eggs valuable for aging muscle. Removing it is like purchasing a vehicle and leaving the engine at the dealer. A patient of mine, Shirley, 72, a retired school librarian from Des Moines, Iowa, had followed a low fat eating plan for more than 10 years. Her doctor had told her to avoid eggs. She came to me after 2 near falls in 3 months. We added 3 whole eggs every morning, cooked gently in olive oil. At her 6 week follow up, she told me she had climbed her porch stairs without gripping the railing for the first time in 2 years. Leucine and choline performing precisely the function the research predicts. Aim for 2 to 3 whole eggs at breakfast, gentle heat, cooked in a small amount of olive oil or alongside avocado. Do not overcook, which degrades the fat soluble vitamins in the yolk. Now, I want to quickly address 3 mistakes I see constantly with eggs. The first is cooking them in a dry, nonstick pan on high heat. High heat degrades the lecithin and fat soluble vitamins in the yolk quickly. Use low to medium heat with a small amount of fat alongside. The second mistake is eating eggs alone with no fat or fiber. The fat soluble vitamins in the yolk, particularly vitamin D, need dietary fat to absorb. An egg eaten dry delivers maybe 40% of the vitamin D you would absorb with a tablespoon of olive oil alongside it. That is not a small difference. The third mistake is treating eggs as optional. For this protocol to work, you need protein at every meal. Eggs at breakfast is not about preference, it is about hitting the leucine threshold when your muscles are primed to use it after the overnight fast. The most important protein signal of the day. Not dinner, not lunch, breakfast. And here's the piece I want to add that most people miss entirely: protein distribution across the day matters as much as total quantity. Research consistently shows that older adults who load most of their protein at dinner, a very common American pattern, build significantly less muscle over 24 hours than those who spread protein across 3 meals of roughly equal size. The breakfast signal is more important after 65, not less. If your mornings have been light on protein, if you have been starting the day with just toast or cereal or coffee, this is where to change first, right here, right now. This is your starting point. Number 5, wild caught salmon. If your legs carry a heaviness in the morning, if nighttime cramps wake you, if sitting for an hour leaves your legs stiff and achy, there is a specific biological process driving that. Chronic low grade inflammation is quietly degrading your muscle tissue around the clock. You do not feel it as inflammation, you feel it as weakness, as heaviness, as legs that used to do things they simply no longer do. Wild caught salmon is among the most effective anti inflammatory tools available through diet. The key compounds are EPA and DHA, long chain omega 3 fatty acids. Picture chronic inflammation in your leg muscles as a slow burning fire inside the structure of a building. It starts somewhere, burns at a low level, and over years it chars the structural supports without anyone noticing until something gives way. EPA and DHA chemically block the compounds your body uses to sustain that fire, specifically a group called prostaglandins and cytokines that your body produces in increasing quantities after age 60. A study from the University of Aberdeen tracked 87 adults over 65 for 18 weeks. The group consuming omega 3 fatty acids, equivalent to roughly 3 servings of wild salmon per week, demonstrated a 22% higher rate of muscle protein synthesis relative to those who did not. That is a university research group tracking older adults eating fish, not a supplement, fish. Now, here is something I want to be direct about because I see this mistake constantly. There is wild caught salmon and there is farm raised salmon, and they are not the same food. A 2021 nutrient analysis found that some farmed Atlantic salmon had omega 6 to omega 3 ratios nearly 3 times worse than wild caught sockeye. Omega 6 fatty acids in excess are pro inflammatory, meaning the farm raised version could be actively worsening the inflammation you are eating fish to reduce. The label says salmon. Your body experiences something very different. Buy wild caught sockeye, coho pink, or Alaskan king are your best options. A practical note on shopping: in the canned fish aisle at any Walmart, Kroger, or Aldi, wild Alaskan sockeye salmon runs under $3 a can. The omega 3 content and vitamin D3 are preserved through the canning process. A can of salmon mixed with a tablespoon of olive oil, some lemon juice, eaten over a simple salad is a complete serving. You do not need a restaurant quality fresh fillet. You need the omega 3s. Canned wild salmon delivers them at a fraction of the cost. Salmon also stands among the very small number of foods that deliver vitamin D3 in clinically relevant quantities. After age 70, your skin's ability to produce vitamin D from sunlight drops dramatically. A large study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology established a direct link between vitamin D deficiency and muscle weakness, balance problems, and accelerated muscle loss. The estimated prevalence of this deficiency in adults over 65 in the US is 77%. 6 ounces of wild caught sockeye delivers close to 1,000 international units of vitamin D3. The daily minimum for adults over 70 is 800 IU. 2 servings per week covers most of your requirement through food. In practical terms, for anyone living north of roughly Kansas or Virginia, you are not making meaningful vitamin D from sunlight for 4 to 6 months of the year. The sun angle is simply too low. For those over 70, even summer sun often fails to maintain adequate levels because the skin's production capacity has declined so significantly. Wild salmon, 2 to 3 times per week, fills a gap that sunlight cannot fill in most of this country for most of the year. 2 to 3 servings weekly is the target. Number 4, spinach and dark leafy greens. Here is what happens inside your legs as you age. After age 75, your body loses roughly a third of its ability to recycle nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the molecule that signals your blood vessels to dilate, to open up and let blood through. When that signaling breaks down, the tiny vessels feeding your quadriceps and calves and hamstrings begin to constrict. Nutrients cannot get in efficiently, waste products cannot get out. The result is muscle that fatigues faster, recovers more slowly, and shrinks year by year. Not from aging alone, from being chronically underfed at the cellular level. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and arugula all deliver high concentrations of dietary nitrates. Your body uses bacteria in your saliva to convert those nitrates back into nitric oxide. In effect, the food becomes a workaround for what aging has taken away from your circulatory system. A study from the Karolinska Institute found that a daily nitrate dose comparable to roughly 200 grams of spinach led to a 19% improvement in how efficiently older adults' skeletal muscle used available oxygen and nutrients. The muscle did not grow bigger. It ran better. Same engine, far better output. Spinach is also one of the richest food sources of magnesium. The CDC estimates that over 60% of Americans 60 and older are chronically deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic processes in the body. One of the most functionally important is muscle relaxation. When your calves seize at night, when your feet cramp involuntarily, when your legs feel tense and tight in the morning, that is frequently a magnesium problem. 1 cup of cooked spinach delivers 157 milligrams of magnesium, roughly 37% of the daily target. From a practical standpoint, a large bag of baby spinach at most grocery stores costs under $3 and keeps for a week. Frozen spinach is nutritionally nearly identical once cooked and costs even less. This is one of the most affordable items on this entire list. One important note for anyone on blood thinners, particularly warfarin: leafy greens contain vitamin K, which interacts with warfarin. This does not mean you should avoid them. It means you should eat them consistently, roughly the same amount each week, so your doctor can calibrate your dose accordingly. Stopping and starting leafy greens is far more disruptive to your INR stability than eating them regularly. Consistent intake, not avoidance. Bring it up at your next appointment and get a stable weekly amount established. I had a patient, Gary, 71, a retired letter carrier from Pittsburgh. He described his legs as feeling like wet cement every single morning. Supplements had been his approach for years. The results were minimal. We shifted his approach to 2 cups of spinach sauteed daily in olive oil with garlic. 6 weeks later, that cement sensation had lifted. He was covering his old mail route again, this time purely for the pleasure of it. The olive oil matters here. Fat soluble compounds in spinach absorb far more effectively alongside a quality fat. Cook your greens in olive oil, not dry. Number 3, Greek yogurt. Most people underestimate what full fat Greek yogurt does for aging muscle. 1 cup of plain full fat Greek yogurt delivers between 17 and 20 grams of complete protein, including all 3 branched chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, in a form that absorbs directly into muscle tissue with unusual efficiency. But here is what elevates it beyond just a protein source. It contains live probiotic cultures, specifically lactobacillus strains. And this connects to something researchers are calling the gut muscle axis. Your gut microbiome directly regulates how much of the protein you eat actually reaches and gets used by your muscles. After 65, the gut microbiome typically becomes less diverse and less efficient. The food digests, but less of it translates into muscle. Foods that deliver live probiotic cultures, particularly Greek yogurt, help rebuild that microbial diversity. Picture it as restarting a distribution center that has been understaffed. The goods are arriving. The problem is the routing. Get the routing right, and everything flows better. Consume your Greek yogurt within 30 to 45 minutes of any physical activity. Even a 10-minute walk counts. This is your anabolic window. Add a tablespoon of ground flaxseed for additional omega-3 content. Choose plain, full fat only. The reduced fat versions substitute the removed fat with added sugar, which actively worsens the inflammatory state you are trying to address. Number 2, beets. On a per gram basis, beets carry dietary nitrate concentrations 3 to 4 times greater than even spinach or kale. A single medium beet delivers around 300 milligrams of dietary nitrates. When those nitrates reach oxygen-depleted muscle tissue during exertion, they convert to nitric oxide rapidly. The result is a wave of blood vessel opening that floods working muscle with oxygen and fuel in a way that aging vascular tissue cannot produce on its own anymore. Wake Forest University researchers found that when older adults consumed the dietary nitrate equivalent of 2 medium beets before moderate exercise, blood flow to the motor control areas of the brain increased by 38%. The effect was not limited to the legs themselves. It extended to the brain's capacity to coordinate and control leg movement. For anyone worried about coordination, about balance, about the kind of fall that happens because the signal between brain and body was slow, this is significant. Beets are also rich in betaine, a compound that reduces homocysteine in the blood. Elevated homocysteine, present in roughly 47% of adults over 60, contributes to faster muscle deterioration, blood vessel damage, and reduced mitochondrial efficiency. Roast your beets at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 60 minutes. You can also buy pre-cooked beets in vacuum pouches at most grocery stores. These are fully cooked, ready to slice and store in a refrigerator for a week. Pair them with any source of lean protein. Add a squeeze of citrus juice. Vitamin C increases nitrate conversion efficiency significantly. Do not boil beets in water for long periods. Water soluble nitrates leach out. Roasting or eating raw preserves them best. If you have never roasted beets before, here is the simplest approach. Wash them, wrap each one individually in foil, and place them in a 400-degree oven for 45 to 60 minutes. Let them cool, then the skins slip right off. They keep in the refrigerator for up to a week. Slice them cold over salads, warm them with dinner, or blend a small amount into a smoothie with frozen berries to mask the earthy flavor. Many grocery stores now sell pre-cooked beets in vacuum-sealed pouches in the produce section. Ready to eat directly, no preparation needed, about $2 to $3 for 2 servings. Now I want to tell you about Frank, 81, retired naval officer, lived outside Norfolk, Virginia, 30 years of service, a man who had been physically capable his entire adult life. When he came to see me, he could not complete 2 city blocks on foot without stopping. His legs, as he described it, had stopped cooperating. His diet was genuinely clean, very low in fat, very lean. He had been eating exactly the way the guidelines from his era told him to eat faithfully for decades. We made one change: 4 tablespoons of high quality, fresh harvest, extra virgin olive oil added to his daily meals. 2 with his morning eggs, 2 over his vegetables at lunch. Nothing else changed in the first month. At his 6-week follow up, he walked 4 blocks without stopping. At 12 weeks, he was back on his bicycle. At 6 months, he called my office to let me know he had completed a 2-mile walk for a veterans charity. He sent me a photograph from the finish line. It is on my office wall right now. That story is not about olive oil being magic. It is about what happens when you give aging muscle exactly the inputs it was missing. And the mechanism behind that is the most important thing I am going to tell you today. Number 1, extra virgin olive oil. If you expected a protein or a powder, I understand the surprise. But the science here is some of the most clinically significant evidence on any food in this category. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, a polyphenol that mimics the mechanism of ibuprofen inside the body. Same mechanism. It inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, that prescription anti-inflammatory drugs target. What distinguishes oleocanthal from prescription NSAIDs is that it delivers this anti-inflammatory effect without the gastrointestinal damage, kidney burden, and cardiac risk that accompany prolonged medication use. For seniors who are often taking anti-inflammatories for joint and muscle pain, sometimes for years on end, this distinction matters clinically. Research out of the University of Athens, published in the journal Clinical Nutrition, tracked 840 adults over 65 across a 3-year period. Those consuming, at minimum, 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily had a 37% reduced rate of sarcopenia diagnosis over that period. 37% from a cooking fat most people already have in their kitchen. Here is why. The polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil activate the mTOR signaling pathway inside muscle cells. This pathway controls whether the body synthesizes new muscle protein. It is the same biological switch triggered by leucine and by resistance training. Olive oil polyphenols turn that switch on independently without requiring exercise, without requiring elevated hormones. After age 70, your body loses roughly 40% of its sensitivity to mTOR signaling. That is a core reason muscle becomes so hard to build later in life. Among dietary sources, extra virgin olive oil stands out as one of the few that appears to meaningfully recover some of that lost mTOR sensitivity. Here is what makes the Harvard research on this particularly compelling. The mTOR pathway is not something you can fully restore with willpower or exercise alone after a certain age. By your mid-70s, the sensitivity has degraded to the point where even consistent resistance exercise provides a fraction of the anabolic signal it would have provided at 50. What makes the polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil significant is that they appear to work through a parallel entry point in this pathway, one that is less affected by age-related degradation. They do not fix the problem completely, but they restore meaningful activity in a biological system that has otherwise gone quiet. And there's a second mechanism, equally important. Hydroxytyrosol, another polyphenol found abundantly in extra virgin olive oil, protects the DNA inside your mitochondria from oxidative damage. As we age, mitochondrial DNA accumulates errors like a master blueprint that has been photocopied too many times. The instructions blur. The result is muscle cells that generate less energy and recover more slowly. Hydroxytyrosol slows that degradation. I know what some of you are thinking. 4 tablespoons a day sounds like a lot. Let me reframe that. 1 tablespoon is roughly what you use to cook 2 eggs, a second drizzled over vegetables at lunch, a third in a simple salad dressing, a fourth over salmon or roasted vegetables at dinner. It integrates naturally into meals you are already eating. The issue is not the quantity, the issue is the quality. Buy it in dark glass with a harvest date on the label, not just an expiration date. Polyphenol content degrades significantly with light and age. Fresh extra virgin olive oil is nutritional medicine. Old, bargain shelf, clear bottled olive oil is just fat. Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and most major grocery chains carry well dated options. Costco sells it in bulk at good prices. The investment is a few dollars more per bottle. The return is worth it. So, before I give you the complete protocol, I want to address something that I know is going through a lot of your minds. Some of you are thinking, I already eat reasonably well. I am not eating junk food. Why would this be new for me? That is a fair question, and it deserves a direct answer. The challenge for most seniors is not that they are eating badly. The challenge is that the guidelines many of them grew up with, the low fat, high carbohydrate model that dominated medical advice from the 1980s through the 2000s, was specifically harmful to muscle maintenance in older adults. Avoiding egg yolks meant losing choline and vitamin D. Reducing fat meant absorbing far fewer fat soluble nutrients from vegetables. Eating light at breakfast meant missing the most important anabolic signal of the day. And replacing fat with refined carbohydrates drove the chronic low grade inflammation that degrades muscle tissue. The problem was not laziness. The problem was following advice that was wrong for this specific purpose at this specific stage of life. I am going to give you a complete practical protocol now. And I want to emphasize something first. You do not need to start all 6 foods simultaneously. That is not how lasting change works, and it is not what I recommend to my patients. Pick the one that fits most naturally into what you are already eating. Get that consistent for a week. Then add a second. The protocol is a destination, not a starting line. The research shows cumulative benefit even from 2 or 3 of these foods consistently present. The full 6 compounds, the effect, but any consistent start is better than a perfect plan that stays on paper. Now, the protocol: 2 eggs cooked in 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, 1 cup of spinach sauteed in the remaining oil with garlic, and 4 ounces of wild caught salmon. Canned works perfectly. That single meal delivers approximately 3.2 grams of leucine, crossing the threshold for muscle protein synthesis, roughly 600 international units of vitamin D3, about 80 milligrams of magnesium, approximately 200 milligrams of dietary nitrates, and significant oleocanthal anti-inflammatory activity. One meal, 4 nutritional goals. Simultaneously, add the full-fat Greek yogurt within 30 minutes of your morning walk. Roasted beets 2 to 3 times per week alongside lunch or dinner, and 4 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil distributed across your daily meals. That is the complete protocol. Here is what to expect when you start. In the first week, you may not notice much. The changes beginning to happen are at the cellular level. Week 2, most people start noticing their legs feeling slightly less heavy in the mornings. Overnight cramping begins to ease. Week 3 to 4 is when the first functional changes typically appear. Getting up from a chair that requires less effort, stairs that feel slightly less steep. These are early markers of tissue beginning to respond correctly. By 6 to 8 weeks, the pattern becomes clearer. By 12 weeks, the research consistently shows measurable improvements in muscle efficiency and strength if the protocol has been followed consistently. Not perfectly, consistently. If you miss a day, you pick it back up the next morning. You do not restart from zero, you just continue. One thing I want to be specific about: the functional markers to watch. Most of my patients see measurable changes in grip strength and stair climbing between weeks 6 and 10. Not dramatic changes, but real ones. A stair that required a deliberate grip on the railing that now does not, a jar you can open again. Getting out of a car seat without pushing off the armrest. These are the benchmarks that matter in daily life, not a number on a scale. The direction of change, if you are consistent, is reliable. And the research supports that direction in adults well into their 80s. One last recommendation: at your next Medicare annual wellness visit, which costs you nothing under Part B, ask your primary care doctor to measure your grip strength and perform a functional mobility assessment. Grip strength under 26 kilograms for men or 18 kilograms for women is a validated clinical predictor of fall risk, hospitalization rate, and 10-year mortality. Most seniors have never had this measured. Ask for it by name. It takes 60 seconds, and it gives you a baseline to track as these foods do their work over the coming months. Sarcopenia builds silently. If you have been told your weakness is just aging, that is not the full story. It is not just aging. It is the absence of specific nutrients over time. Your window to act is open right now, not after a fall, not after a hospitalization, right now, today. The body is not looking for permission to rebuild. It is waiting for the materials. Type started in the comments and tell me which food you are adding first. And if you know someone who has been told their leg weakness is just part of getting older, please share this with them today, not eventually, today. The references for every study I mentioned are in the description below. Bring them to your doctor, ask questions. Your health is worth understanding clearly. I will see you in the next one.